Hello, and welcome to the Backstage Knitting Podcast. I'm Bethany, and I am your host. Now, I'm going to start out where this is usually where Anna jumps in and says she's Anna, and we welcome you to the show. But after a lot of talking and consideration, Anna has decided to take a step back to focus on other projects and all of that. So we want to wish Anna all the best with her future endeavors, and she will definitely be back to meet with us and check in and continue to be a part of our fantastic fiber community as her schedule allows and everything works out. So that is where we are, and I will be taking over hosting duties on my own. So I hope everybody sticks around and we'll move forward. So this is episode 40. It seems like a good time to break forth into this new chapter. And let's see, it is Monday, June 11th, 2018. And hi, listeners, new and returning. Thank you so much for giving me a try. And hopefully it all works out for you. So let's jump in with some of our usual business. I want to give a shout out to Lizzie from Toronto, Lynn from Tuscaloosa, and Nancy from Maine. They all went into our Getting to Know You thread and they introduced themselves. So hello, thank you for joining us and listening and giving me a shot. If you want a shout out, go to our Ravelry group and introduce yourself and tell us, where you're from, what you like to knit, anything that you want. And I like to get back and chat with you, and it's a lot of fun for me to get to know our listeners and all of that. So you can go into our Ravelry group and join our Ravelry group, and there is a Getting to Know You thread you can do that on. You can find me other places in the great wide world of the internet. We are Backstage Knitting is on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Periscope. The show notes where I will link to everything I have talked about today can be found at backstageknitting.com. You can email me with questions, comments, or concerns at backstageknitting@gmail.com. And again, you can also find me on the Backstage Knitting Podcast Ravelry group. So today's segments include On the Needles, Off the Needles, In Timeout, Spinning and Weaving, In Rehearsal, Netflix and Knit, Book Club, Yarny Adventures, and Events. So jumping right into business today. What is on my needles? I have been working like a mad woman on my Mama Vertebrae by Kelly Vanikirk. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right. The actual pattern page that I paid for says Kelly Brook, but on the Ravelry listing it says Vanikirk. So hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Brook was a whole lot easier. So I am doing this out of Knitted Wit in their Victory sock base in the Rainier colorway. So it is this beautiful variegated yarn that has a whole bunch of greens and blues and reds and with little like pops of reds and purples in it. There's some yellow and white. It's absolutely beautiful, but as a Northwest girl, I had to go with the Mount Rainier colorway, of course. It's a fairly simple knit. It is in open front raglan cardigan. It's gonna have sleeves that go down to about my elbows, and I think it'll be just enough to push through the summer chill. It can get really, people like to blast their air conditioning, and I get really cold, so having a good warm but still light cardigan for the summer will be really nice. And when I measured it this morning, I had about 10 centimeters left to go on the body before I have to start the ribbing at the bottom. And yes, I said centimeters. I am not starting a revolution, but the pattern is written strictly in centimeters. It doesn't have inches or the US needle size. anywhere to be found, so that has been a fun challenge for my brain. But it is also, the pattern is also written for multiple weights of yarn. I'm doing this in a fingering weight, but they do have other sizes and stitch counts for DK and worsted, which I think is really practical and helpful if you're going to pay money for a pattern. And it's cool that you can get to do it in multiple weights of yarn, and because it is such a simple pattern, you can have fun with it and do some adjusting. Let's see, the other things I have been working on, 2 Sockhead Slouch Hats by Kelly McClure, and they're on separate needles, but I'm kind of working on them in tandem. They are, again, out of Knitted Wit, and they're her Victory Sock base again. One of them is in the Lionheart colorway, which is a red and a gold, so it's Gryffindor colors. And the other one is the Sneaky Snake colorway, so Slytherin colors. And I am making them for my sister's birthday presents. I know I had one sister's birthday present hat that I just kept ripping out, and this one seems to be sticking. So I only have a couple more inches to do on the Gryffindor one before I start the decreases, and I have more than a couple inches to go on the Slytherin hat. But the Slytherin hat is taking a while because I'm using the round and round and round and round circularness of the hat to practice picking. Usually I'm a thrower, so I, wrap the yarn around, but I'm using that as a chance to practice, just kind of going around mindlessly and get picking under my belt, partially because I like to do the 2-hand knitting when I do color work, and I really like color work. So it's always a good skill to have, and plus, sometimes my hands get tired, and having that switch, and if I can maintain fairly consistent tension between one thing and the next, then I will probably have a better time, keeping those hands healthy and stuff, and I can switch techniques to rest muscles and, all of that. I apologize if I'm talking very fast. I will slow down. Yes. Okay. So that's been the main thing I think I have worked on since I recorded last. I haven't been taking very good notes, but I have finished some things. So the first thing off of my needles was the Sparkle Raglan sweater by Kristen Ritter. And that was a kit that I ordered from weareknitters.com. And in going through to kind of type out my outline / show notes, the sweater kit doesn't seem to be available anymore, but I do know you can still get the yarn. And the yarn that I bought to make this sweater that came in the kit, it's a white yarn that has random splotches of pink and blue. So over the course of this raglan sweater, you have little dashes, and it was such an easy knit. It's a bulky weight yarn knit with size 11 needles, so it knit up super fast that I pushed through that pretty quickly, so that was nice. It is done in pieces, so I had to seam it together, which I didn't care for, because it's just not that much fun to seam things together. I think I am going to order more of the same yarn and do it in the round. Then I will make the body a bit longer. The sleeves come to about mid-forearm, which I'm actually okay with, because I usually push my sleeves up anyways, and now I just don't have to push them up as far. But I would definitely make the body a little longer. And because I made a slightly bigger side, so it has some good ease to it, where it sits on my body, I think it makes me look wider, and that if I dropped it, down another couple inches, which shouldn't take that long to knit because it's thick yarn and thick needles, I think it'll just elongate that a little better, but it's super comfy. I would like to wear more sweaters than hoodies next winter is kind of a goal I have. So that was so much fun to knit though, and the yarn was just squishy and a dream, and I really enjoyed that. Let's see, what else? I also finished, a good friend of mine had his first daughter at the end of April? Yes, I think it was the end of April. Had his first baby girl, so congratulations. And I, of course, then had to whip out a baby sweater. So I made the baby vertebrae, also in a fingering weight yarn. It's the, small version of the vertebrae sweater I am working on. It's a nice open-faced cardigan, so if baby gets sick, you're not necessarily ruining the front of the baby sweaters, that it's just enough to keep their back and their arms warm. And I made this using the Twisted Owl Fiber Studio, their fingering weight, in the Dark Queen Duck colorway. And I bought this at Stitches when I went in 2017. And I bought it simply because I liked the colorway name, because Dark Queen Duck is awesome. And yeah, I didn't really have a plan for it, but when this baby arrived, I was like, oh no, this is it. This is the baby sweater. This is what it has to be. And I'm pretty sure those are the only things I have finished since talking to you guys last. Let's see. In Time Out. Well, in Time Out, the sweater I was in love with that it was knitting up like a dream and I was so happy, and wasn't it great? The honeymoon is over. Over. The Comfort Fade Cardi by Andrea Mowry. The yarn is beautiful. The pattern is written very well. But, it has this beautiful kind of shawl collar done in garter stitch with pretty short rows up the sides of the sweater. So I finished the sleeves. They're great. The body's all done. And I picked up the stitches for the collar around the body of the sweater, and I was off by like 75 stitches. Because you're supposed to pick up a certain amount of stitches, you have to do these short rows and all of that. So I let it sit for a week or two. I let it sit. I busted out a baby sweater, Fine, be that way. Because I hate picking up stitches, so I was really avoiding pulling them out. And then I wanted to finish the sweater. My brother was graduating from law school soon, and I wanted to wear the sweater to graduation. So I ripped out the needle, picked up more stitches. This time I was only like 50 stitches short, so I was getting closer. And I was like, okay, I think I can make it work, because I had it marked. If you're going up the sides, I had a stitch marker where the collar top of your neck shoulder stitches were, and I had the correct number there. And then, so I was about 25-ish short on either side, along the body. I was like, no, I can totally make this work. I did it all. I didn't do these short rows for the last color, because you knit around, and then you knit a bunch of short rows, and you finish it, and then you have to do the whole color transition, and then with the new color, you do the same thing with the short rows, and then a color transition, and then short rows. And so for color number 4, I didn't do the short rows. I just went around, I don't know, 4 times, 6 times, something like that. And then I bound off. And the collar is pulling up on the body of the sweater. So instead of hanging level, it pulls it up. So it kind of puckers in an elasticy sort of way. and I'm really not happy with it. And it's really unfortunate because I really, really, really want to wear this sweater. So it's been in timeout for a couple weeks. I had the Gals at Knitting group. I took pictures and sent it to the Gals at Knitting group and was like, hey, do I really have to undo this? And they were like, yeah, you do. So the collar part is going to be frogged. I'm going to try it again. I don't know what I'm going to do differently. If you guys have any suggestions, if you have made your Comfort Fade Cardi and it isn't a disaster in the collar area and you know what you did because I clearly did something wrong, let me know, because I'm failing is what I'm doing at that. So it's in timeout. Yep. Okay, moving on. Okay, spinning and weaving. I feel like I've done a lot of spinning lately. And, I mean, you know, it's nowhere near as much compared to how much knitting I have done, but I have definitely done a lot of spinning. I finished plying my singles from Tour de Fleece last year, so that is great. I need to get those off the bobbins and set, because Tour de Fleece is coming up in a couple weeks. And I have a bunch of really pretty fleece to review that I will be working on for my Tour de Fleece project. I think I'm going to do at least half of the bumps, because I think they sent me like 18 ounces all in a bunch of different colorways. At least half of the bumps on the wheel I would like to do, maybe not half, but several on the drop spindle as well, just to kind of compare. And so I did get that plied. I got the chain ply to work. Everything was okay. And then we finally made it to Y week at preschool, which was amazing because you know what? Starts with Y, guys. Yarn. I love yarn. And so we had a bunch of yarn, like themed coloring sheets. I brought in the loom. I taught them how to braid. I brought in a whole bunch of stuff, like my big tote of acrylic yarn, and I cut long strips and like attached it to a safety pin, and then we taped the safety pin to the table, and then we worked really on our crossbody on this piece goes over, this piece goes over, then we get this piece over and this piece over, and really working crossing that midline of our body, and you know, the fine motor skills that go along with holding the yarn. I also brought my spinning wheel in, so I would like sit there during the morning activity while they're building things on the floor, and I would kind of spin above them and they'd ask questions. And then I had them all during the week, they'd get in line, and one of them would like draft while I treadled, and then like they'd come sit down next to me and I would kind of draft, and they would practice on the treadle, and you know, I would help because their little feet couldn't quite get it, but we were getting there. So, and they were really excited about it. We watched a video on how to make yarn. So hopefully next year I'm hoping to do like some field trips to like alpaca farms and things, and maybe get some hand carders and kind of show them that stuff, and you know, make a whole bunch of fibery nerds out of all of them. It'll be amazing. Okay, so that has mostly been it. I went on an adventure this weekend, and, well, I'm going to save that for Yarny Adventures. That's what I'm going to do. I've done a lot of spinning. It's been pretty great. Okay, moving on. In rehearsal. So, right now our house is in rehearsal for an upcoming production of Lysistrata. And for those of you who don't know, the basic plot, and this is all super old ancient Greek, we're setting it, you know, modern dress and stuff, but the men are at war all the time, and the women not so happy with their men being at war all the time. So in order to get the men to find a way to establish peace throughout the country and stop being at war all the time, they decide to withhold their sweet, sweet lovin'. And eventually the men come to a peace, and at that point the women are like, you know, you're not very good at all of this, so we're just going to take over running the government. it's pretty awesome. I'm really excited about it. So I am like costume supervisor. I'm going to put together outfits for different characters, and then they kind of come back and go, well, this is what I already have, and then I help go shopping for the stuff they don't have. And then I'm also doing the sound design, and I'm super excited. It's going to be a total, like, Lady Rock kind of soundtrack with some No Doubt and Garbage, but also, like, Heart and Stevie Nicks and Pat Benatar. And if you guys have any suggestions as to totally awesome, like, Lady Rock that you're going to, you know, take over the world to, or like to yell to in the car or whatever, you know, let me know. Because I love finding new music, and I love lots of suggestions. So that is what is in rehearsal in my life at the moment. Let's see. Next segment. Okay. Netflix and knit. I did make it all the way through all of the MCU. So that is great. I have repeated a couple of those movies a few times just because I like to have them on. So I've watched Civil War and the first Avengers film a lot. I watched Thor again on an airplane because I had it digitally, and that's what I turned on my iPad. Let's see. I have also on like TV. I completed the original Full House series, which I mean I'd seen over my lifetime, but you know, watching it several episodes a night kind of thing. Then Hulu was like, oh, well, you finished Full House, so here's Step by Step, which I watched a lot because it was part of the original TGIF lineup, but I don't really remember it quite as well, and the episodes aren't as cemented in my head the way that, like, Full House is. So that's been fun to kind of work my way through that. In the movie theaters, I went and saw the movie Book Club with Diane Keaton and Jane Fonda and Candice Bergen, it was hilarious. It was so funny. So the general premise is that these older women, you know, in their like 60s or so, and they're in a book club, and they read 50 Shades of Grey, and shenanigans ensue, and it is hilarious. Hilarious. I loved it. I also went and saw Deadpool 2, and some people have said that, yes, it's better than the first. Most people have said it's not as good as the first. I really liked it. It was funny, and it was telling a different story than the first Deadpool was. And it didn't try necessarily to do what the first Deadpool did. There are a lot of these kind of movies, like this was my problem with Avengers Age of Ultron and Guardians 2, where they were like, hey, remember that funny thing I said in the first movie? I'm going to say it again. And that doesn't do a lot for me. Like, do something new and funny and I'll laugh at it. I also went and saw RBG, which is a documentary about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who's a Supreme Court justice, and it was fantastic. I had no idea, like, all of her history and, you know, why she went into law and, like, how hard a worker she is. I mean, the woman would work 24 hours a day, I think, if she didn't absolutely need to sleep and eat and stuff. Like, she's just a machine. And very, like, even-keeled, but very... She knows what she wants. And very kind of set in her convictions and her desire that women have an equal playing field. And that it was very powerful to watch a lot of that. And then I went and saw Infinity War. I saw Infinity War twice, actually. I loved it. Yeah, and I think that's actually all I'm going to say about it for those of you who have not seen it yet. It was awesome. Awesome. My dad didn't like it, but my dad is wrong. I'm just saying. Okay. Next segment, I have added a new segment called Book Club because we watch TV, but you know what? I also like to read. And while I'm on this absolute Marvel obsession right now, I have been reading the 1970s run of Ms. Marvel. And Ms. Marvel started out as a co-star character in the Captain Marvel comics and then was kind of spun off into her own series. The 1970s run has about 23 books in it. Sorry, I totally split this stitch and it's yeah, okay, it distracted me. I'm back now. It's about 23 books in its series, and yeah, I really like it. I have been reading it through the Marvel Unlimited app, which is a subscription service. It's kind of like Netflix for Marvel comic books. I mean, I think it has everything except anything that has been released in the last 6 months. And if you're gonna, start reading Marvel comics, there's a whole lot to choose from. So that is how I get my Marvel comic books, and I'm really enjoying that. And I am also about halfway through Marvel Comics, The Untold Story by Sean Howe, which is it's a very interesting read for me because for the most part it's these people worked here, created these characters, worked on these stories, whatever, blah, 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 and then either Marvel hit rough times or they got mad at the lack of royalties and creative ownership over their characters and quit and went to DC. And then they would come back. And new people would come in and, it's kind of a repeat sort of thing. But when I read it, my heart starts to pound and I get really, excited. Like I used to do when I would, read Harry Potter when I was a kid or other adventure-y sort of stories that I would be all okay, read, breathe, it's just a book. But so it's very strange that this sort of these people worked here, they told these stories, these sorts of things happened in these stories. This is how sales were. Ta-da! Yeah, it's very interesting. So I've really been enjoying reading those. And, okay, moving on to Yarny Adventures. So I have been on several Yarny Adventures as of late. At the beginning of May, I went on the PNW Yarn Crawl. I went with my mom and my sisters, and I posted several pictures to the Backstage Knitting Podcast Instagram story about our different stops and things. And, that's always a really nice day to go hang out with my mom and my sisters, and I get to, buy yarn and look at yarn. And they've added a new yarn stop, or a new yarn shop to the crawl called Sock Peddlers in Lakewood, Washington. And it was a very nice little store. So, and the owner, I think it was the owner I was talking to, who's very nice, and I think they have a lot of potential, and I haven't been back yet, but it's been a busy month. So, but yes, so the yarn crawl was great. On Memorial Day, I felt a need for some sort of yarny adventure. My other plans for the day had fallen through. So me and the gals from my knitting group got up. We got on the link rail, and then we got on a ferry, and we went to Bainbridge Island, and we visited Church Mouse Yarns and Teas. And I bought really pretty yarn that I came home and wound up, and then have changed my mind as to what to do with 4 times since then. So I just keep working on my mama vertebrae, and I'll deal with that once I'm done with this. But we had a lovely afternoon. It's always nice just to kind of go out and do things, and it was fairly relaxed. We walked around the rest of Bainbridge and had some lunch and some ice cream, and it was a good time. Let's see, and then last Saturday was Worldwide Knit in Public Day, and it really just, it was a low-key sort of thing. We went to the Twisted Kilt in Puyallup and just had a couple drinks, I think I did most of the knitting, but that's okay. Most of us all knit in public most of the year, so it's not like a huge thing. It's just another excuse to get together, really. And we played a fun game, so they all got to go home with some little prizes and treats. Yeah, that was my Worldwide Knit in Public Day. I don't think there's anything more eventful than that. Next year, I hope to do something a little bigger, maybe a little earlier during the day. If there was a location or some sort of other side event that you guys think would be really great for Worldwide Knit in Public Day, please let me know. I'm all for expanding my event horizons. What else? Oh, and then yesterday, I went to the Vashon Sheepdog Classic with my brother Alex. I had never been before. I know Anna has gone a couple times, or at least once a couple years ago, and it was so much fun, even though it was kind of rainy and gross in the morning and then rainy and gross a little later in the day. We did have a great break of sunshine. It was really nice and interesting, and I knew very little about like sheepdog herding and the things and the rules, and so my brother, who has a master's in game design, was all about finding out the rules and kind of explaining it and really delving into the program. I, on the other hand, got there, looked at the sheeps and some of the women in the fiber village spinning on their wheels, and was like, oh, I don't think I want to knit. I really think I want to spin. So I found a booth that was selling fiber and drop spindles, and I bought a little 4-ounce braid and a new drop spindle, and got quite a bit done yesterday. So yeah, I'm not sure the fiber was the best. It just required a lot more like pre-drafting to get it to kind of break up and draft easily for me, which I haven't had to do a ton of, but you know, I still had a really great afternoon, and kids and stuff would ask me questions, and parents would ask me questions about what I was doing, so that was fun to kind of not only demonstrate but educate. You know, I'm like a fiber evangelist or something. Yeah. Okay, so I think that's it for my Yarny Adventures. And then, upcoming events. Yay, upcoming events. Right now, the only thing that is set on the schedule for upcoming events is the Mariners Stitch and Pitch, which is Tuesday evening, July 31st. I will be there. I believe Anna is planning to be there as well, and I will also have my knitting group and my mom and my sisters in tow. So if you are there, please come say hi. I might have a little goodie for you, so yeah, come check it out and enjoy a nice day of baseball. The last 2 years the Mariners have lost, which is a bummer, but hopefully we will rally and do better this year. So, I think that is everything I need to share with you today. Thank you so much for listening and spending part of your commute with me. Again, show notes can be found at backstageknitting.com. You can email me with questions, comments, or concerns at backstageknitting@gmail.com. We have a fantastic Ravelry group with awesome people, Backstage Knitting Podcast on Ravelry, so come join us and check us out. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and if you get a second and like what you hear, go ahead and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. That would be awesome. It, you know, bumps up the rating and helps people find the show a little better. So thank you, and we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.